Do you have an organizational chart, or are you just figuring it out as you go? I'm Melissa Franks, your host of the Opt-In podcast, and today we are talking about how to design the team of your dreams with the expertise, the ability to deliver, and the peace of mind that you have the right people doing the right things at the right time. It's really interesting how the businesses that we support at On Call COO all tend to have the same topics come up literally in the same season. I'm not sure exactly how that happens because they don't know each other, and the teams that work with them are different. We don't have the same people working with all the clients, and yet here we are. And in the last couple of weeks, we have been doing significant organizational design work. And it's something that doesn't get talked about a ton in small business because maybe it's boring, maybe it's considered an HR topic, maybe it's considered just like innate knowledge. And what I realized this week when one of our clients said, my whole team has never worked inside of a corporate setting, so they don't understand the importance of roles in a hierarchy. And a light bulb went off for me because many entrepreneurs now have never worked in a traditional environment. And in fact, they're hiring people that have never worked in a traditional environment. And what that leaves is just knowledge gap. It's not a detriment per se. However, as I say to you often, there are a lot of things that we can learn from the corporate environment. I know, we don't like corporate, we like small business, we're the anti-corporate, and I get it. Corporate has its own set of challenges. That's where I spent most of my life. They're also doing some things right, and there's a reason and a rationale for it. When I was in the tech startup that I worked at inside of the big financial services company, our third to last CEO was really, really passionate about a flat organizational structure. And you probably have never seen one because there are leading thinkers out there about it and nobody's actually implemented it. In fact, it got shot down relatively quickly anytime anybody brought it up. And the reason for that is it almost looks like a mind map. And in the center is the business. And then you have these spokes going out of all of these people in various departments. And what it does is it theoretically allows people to take action faster and have more ownership and more delivery. The challenge is that there's people involved and that there needs to be levels of authority and decision making based on expertise, because you can get yourself into a really big pickle if you're trying to do something or you make a decision and you're not equipped to do it. And so that's why it never moved forward. In fact, Elon Musk really likes these flat organizational structures. So does Steve Jobs, and so did a few others. They never actually successfully implemented it because they would get into trouble, big trouble, big, huge trouble, when they couldn't move forward or a bad decision was made because they had tried this flat organizational structure. So that is why there's something called the organizational hierarchy, and it literally looks like it says. There's somebody at the top and there's somebody at the bottom. And there are various levels in between depending on your organizational size and structure. In the end, though, all business is the same. You all hear me say that a lot. All businesses have finance. They just do. You may outsource it to an accountant or a bookkeeper or a fractional CFO. You still have finance in your business. All business has sales. Even if you are a not-for-profit, you still have an element of sales in your business. It might be fundraising. If you're in education, it's recruiting students and families to come join your organization, right? There's always an element of sales. There's always an element of marketing. There's always an element of communication. There's always an element of operations. How does the thing actually function? If you have people working in your organization, you have human resources or people elements as well. And then if you're actually serving people, you're selling them something. Hi, that's what you're doing. Doesn't matter what business you're in. Then you also have things like customer support and customer experience and customer success and on and on and on. These things are all the same. It does not matter if you sell software as a service, if you are a education institution, if you are a coach, if you are in financial services, if you are in professional services, if you are in construction, if you are in design, if you are in creative industries, on and on and on. It does not matter. If you have a business, all of these functions exist and you cannot eliminate them. You might just collapse them in on each other. And so as you grow, what happens in your business is you go from needing generalists, Jack and Jills of all trades, to specialists. And that's where the tension point comes in, because what is true, and I speak from experience, I have interviewed tens of thousands of people. I have hired thousands of people. I have restructured probably 50 to 100 organizations in my career. Haven't stopped to count. And the one thing that I know to be true is that if you are a generalist, you are not a specialist, and the transformation either direction is not successful. You cannot expect a generalist to become a specialist in one specific area. It's just not in their nature. It's not what they want to do. And vice versa. If you ask a specialist to become a generalist, they're going to get stressed out. They're going to have failure points. They're going to hate their job. Identifying whether you have a generalist standing in front of you that loves to have their hands on all of the things, or you have a specialist that has deep knowledge, expertise, skill, and desire to do something to perfection every single time is really, really important. And so as you're building your small business, you hire generalists because you just need people to do stuff well. You need people to be able to hand work off to. And as your business grows, what you need is two things. You need leadership and specialization. And this is where things get messy, because often, and this is what we have seen over and over and over again, and these are some of the conversations that we are literally having today with our clients, is that a specialist, when they're needed, cannot be created out of that generalist. And so what happens in your business is a couple of things. Either over time, the generalists need to move on to other opportunities at other companies, or they need to begin working for specialists. So let me give you an example. I'm going to use operations as an example because that's really, really helpful. You may hire an operations manager. This is the favorite role to hire. I'm just telling you right now, every time we work with a business, they're like, we tried to hire an operations manager and it didn't work out, or we're about to get rid of our operations manager and we don't know what to do. Like, this role is a thing, rightfully so. Operations managers typically are generalists. They are. And they have their hands in a whole bunch of things, and they make sure that things work, and they can support customer success, and they can support customer support, and they can probably do a little bit of marketing, and they can do all these things, right? They are generalists by nature. And what that means is that they're not strategists. What that means is that they're not big picture visionary thinkers. What that means is that they can execute the work in front of them based on how it's assigned. They can't be proactive with moving forward. And so what happens as your business grows, and this is something that a few business owners have said to us a couple of times, what happens as your business grows, all of a sudden the business owner is like, I don't know what needs to happen, and I can't help them when they ask me what needs to happen. Because what's actually happening is there is a expertise gap. There's actually information and knowledge and skill and just time and chair that is missing. And so then the perception is that the ops manager is doing a bad job, which is what's really happening is that the ops manager is being asked to do things that the ops manager can't do. The ops manager is being asked to stretch and up level, and they're just not capable. And here's where this gets tricky, because your ops manager is probably telling you they can. Because the ops manager sees, I want to grow with the company. I want to become an ops director. I want to become a COO. I want to do all of these things. They have their own personal goals, a what's in it for them sort of situation, and you just want them to do it. So you're like, well, if I call you an ops director, will you just be the director? Will you direct the things? And the answer is they can't, because they don't know how. And so now you have a decision to make. And the decision is, do you hire the ops director to manage the ops manager, or do you make a fundamental staffing change and you don't have an ops manager and you bring in an ops director? Now, I'm going to pause here before I tell you the various scenarios to go through, because I want to talk about organizational hierarchy. I actually want to get into the weeds around this, because this is really important. There is a reason that in traditional businesses, there are different titling that are based on hierarchy. Okay? And they go a little something like this, although some levels may be skipped, some may not be used at all. Depends on the organization. At the very bottom is associate. At the very, very bottom is associate, and that is somebody that's like fresh out of college, 1 to 2 years of experience. They know enough to be dangerous. They need to be given task level activities and followed up with, right? They are entry level. Okay? So level 1 is associate. And then level 2, this gets a bunch of weird titling because they're not an associate and they're not a level 3, which is a specialist. They're like in the murky middle. So this is somebody that has like 3 years of experience. They're definitely more senior than an associate. They've advanced past the entry level. And they still have a lot of direction that they need to be given and a lot of skill acquisition. So generally speaking, let's say that you have an operations associate, then you have, an operations analyst is usually what comes next, right? And then you have the operations specialist, and that's somebody that has like 5 years of experience. They know what they're doing. They have mastery over their job. They don't need much management, generally speaking. They can take on new projects and bring them to completion. So this is where you start to like do they can use their brain to do things, is at the operations specialist level. So you have associate, brand new, baby worker, right out of college, 1 year, 2 years of experience, needs a ton of direction, task level assignment, supervision, and encouragement. And then you get to the next level, which is level 2, and they can start to operate with some autonomy. They've kind of mastered the stuff, they can do tasks and do it well and execute it, so you can assign them work. You don't need to sit on them as much as you do the associate. And then when you get to level 3, where you have the specialist, then that's somebody that can work pretty autonomously. That's somebody that can get less specific assignments. We need a process for this. We need to figure out that. We need this problem solved. And within boundaries and an understanding of how much authority they have, they can go execute and implement whatever needs to be done. And then you get to the ops manager. And the ops manager does 2 things. The ops manager manages the people, and the ops manager manages the function. So this is where operations starts to be broken up into a couple of pieces. Before you have an ops manager, everybody is doing everything, Jack and Jill of all trades. And then when you get to an operations manager, you may actually start to break things out. These are the people that work on processes and systems and tools and implementation. These are the people that work on technology. These are the people that do reporting and dashboards and KPIs and all of the things, right? So like all of a sudden you've got these like 3 different, you've been able to segregate the work and ops into 3 different departments, if you will, and the manager oversees that. And then what happens is, as your business grows, those teams of associates and analysts and specialists get bigger. And what you end up having is managers for each of the functions. So you actually have a manager of process and systems. You'll have a manager of tech. You'll have a manager of dashboards, KPI reporting, right? And they will have a whole team under them. And then that's when you hire the director of ops, because the director of ops is responsible for managing the managers and the various functions, and the director of ops does short-term strategy. The director of ops does 1 to 18 month strategy. And this is where you start to see the strategic leadership come into play. Do you kind of see how we're working this up and through? So once you have the director of operations, they're overseeing departments. And those departments have managers and staff below them. And the purpose of the director is to ensure that all of those teams are successful and they're meeting their metrics and KPIs and improving the business, and to chart the course, to work with the other directors in the business to say, this is what our role in ops is to enable growth that the sales team needs. This is our role in ops to be able to support the things that customer support, success, and experience need. This is our role in ops to be able to allow marketing to do their thing, whatever it might be, right? The director starts to interact with all of them and develops the strategy and the plan and the roadmap and executes. And then eventually you get to an operations executive. We can talk all day long around associate vice president, senior vice president, C-suite. Like, we don't need to get into that today. That's not really the point of the conversation. But eventually you get into an executive. And what the executive does is they're managing multiple directors. So this is when your organization gets so large that you also need specialized directors. And then the executive pulls it all together and they work on the strategy that's really the 3 to 5 year roadmap. They're the one that's advising and directing the owner of the business and working with all of the other senior leaders in the organization. Now, I share that example with you because I want you to understand that as you're moving up the hierarchy, it is incredibly possible for somebody to go from an operations associate to a chief operating officer. I'm not saying that it's not. It is incredibly possible because what happens, and this is the irony in everything, is that the operations associate is a generalist. And then you get more specialized, and then more specialized, and then the manager for a minute might be a little bit of a generalist, and then that gets more specialized, and the same thing happens at director. And then by the time you get to executive, you're back in this generalist frame of mind. But the difference is 2 things. As you move up the hierarchy, you have skill mastery and you are mastering leadership and management skills. The second thing is that you are accumulating experience and knowledge. And so when you get to the levels of director and executive, you also have developed strategic, visionary, and implementation skills. You've actually learned how the business works and functions. You have gone out and acquired additional knowledge on how to define strategy. You have done all of those things. And what is also true is that some people aren't cut out for that strategy piece. That's why there are not as many directors and executives as there are managers and doers. It's because that strategy piece is a difficult muscle to train. It requires a diverse skill set. And I'm going to be really controversial and say what it also requires is diversity of experience. It is incredibly rare that you see an incredibly talented, high-performing strategist that has only ever worked in one business at one time. I recently, a couple of months ago, did a good amount of press around the CEO change at Target. And one of the things that I talked about really specifically was that the new CEO that's coming into Target has never worked anywhere else. And that is really dangerous. Target is in a position right now where it is failing. There's a lot of reasons for that, not the purpose of this podcast. The challenge is that they have a short-sighted leader that's coming in as CEO. He knows nothing else. He's experienced nothing else. He's grown nothing else. He's failed at nothing else. And so all he knows is the playbook inside of the business. Sure, he knows Target better than anybody else. What he doesn't know is what Amazon's got cooking in the back room that nobody knows about. What he doesn't know is what Walmart's strategy is that's going on. Interestingly, their CEO just stepped down too. Pay attention to trends. What he doesn't know is what's happening with the department stores that they used to compete with and with Ulta and Sephora. He doesn't know what's happening inside of their businesses, inside of their strategic intent, because they're competitors. And when you have the ability to move around, heck, he should even potentially, that CEO should also be working in other industries. Understand what's happening in food and beverage. Go work at PepsiCo for a while, or Coca-Cola, or a candy business, or whatever. But as you have a diversity of skill set and expertise at those senior levels, you have a bigger knowledge base to define innovative strategies that can grow and scale a business. You also have all of this muscle memory around, oh, I've watched that play before. I know it's not going to make it into the end zone. Don't do it, and here's why. When you have only ever been inside of one business and you have gradually worked yourself up the ladder, you will have skill and expertise and knowledge gaps. It's just the reality. And so I often recommend, and again, this is really, really controversial, is that at those senior levels, you should be hiring from outside. This is not a situation where your goal as a small business owner is to promote within all the way up the ranks. It's just not. And if you are in a rapidly growing organization, if you are in one that is like growing by leaps and bounds, you're doubling your revenue year over year, you don't have time to upskill somebody. You don't have time to get somebody ready. And frankly, friends, and this might hurt the most out of everything that I say in this podcast, you're not skilled enough. You don't know how to be a director of ops. You don't know how to be a director of customer experience. You don't know how to be a director of marketing because you haven't done it. You're the owner of the business. It is a fool's errand if you think that you are going to take somebody that comes into your business as an associate or even a specialist, and you are going to train them to be a director or an executive inside of your business. It's just not going to happen. Now, could you get mentors? Could you get it? Absolutely. And those are really effective ways to do something. And eventually the mentor may say to you that they're not the right fit. You have to be open-minded with the entire process. But the reason that I wanted to pause and say that here is because there is this fallacy that because you did all of the functions when you started the business because you had to, because you couldn't pay anybody else to do it, that you have this innate expertise and understanding of what all of the roles are in the business. It's just BS. You do not. You don't know better. And last week, I talked about why you need to hire people that know more than you because I got all hopped up about a podcast that I listened to. I stand by that. The way that you're going to grow your business is you're going to hire experts into functions for which you have no clue how to do them. Now, we all have some innate ability. I like to say that owners of the businesses are the best salespeople because you just are. You just are, right? It doesn't mean you know how to sell. Oh, yeah, it doesn't mean you know how to sell. It just means that you are really good at sales. And so if you want to build a sales organization, you need to hire a couple of really good salespeople that can replace you in the sales function. And then eventually you need to hire somebody that understands sales processes and approaches and KPIs and metrics and how to motivate a sales team and how to hire the right people. Like, you need to hire somebody to do that. Of course, you're always going to be the best one. Of course, you're always going to have the highest close rate. Of course, you're going to be able to like literally do all the things, right? Of course you are. It doesn't mean that you're good at sales. And it definitely does not mean that you can train salespeople and lead a sales organization. So stop trying. This is like basically my love letter to you saying like you don't have to do it all. Just hire the experts. And so I know that this one is a little bit shorter than normal today, but I just wanted to like breathe into all of you that the reason that corporations have these hierarchies, the reason that these roles are defined in such a way is because they know empirically they're multi-billion dollar businesses. They've been around for hundreds of years. They know that specialists are not generalists and generalists are not specialists. And they also know that depending on the human and skill acquisition and experience, that at some places people just tap out. And that somebody that is a really amazing specialist may never be a director. And that is okay. It is absolutely okay. And so what you as the owner need to identify is who do I have on the team? What are they really good at? And how far can I push them up the ladder? And that's where having transparent conversations and really deep and understanding conversations go. The other piece of this is just understanding where your business is in the growth cycle. Are you at a place where you need managers? Are you at a place where you need directors? Like where are you? And this comes down to how many people you have and what are they doing? That's all. So I hope that you can take this brief podcast today with last week's podcast and pair them together and then start to think about the people that are working inside of your business today. Really, what level are they at? What gaps are there? And if you are planning to hire, think about what you need to hire next. Really, what is that role? What level is it at? What experience does it need to be? And then lastly, you need to be ready to pay for it. Because when you go out to hire an experienced director, they're expensive in comparison to the rest of your team. You're able to hire associates and specialists like pretty inexpensively, especially because your small business probably provides a ton of perks that a traditional job doesn't do. But as you move up the hierarchy, those people know their worth and they know what they can do for your business. And so often we collectively have sticker shock in the small business space because we're like, that's a corporate salary. I'm a small business. I'm not going to pay that. Well, if you want corporate skills, you have to pay the corporate salary. It just is what it is. And so what you need to think about is on the flip side, if you need to pay them significantly more than you were planning to or the rest of the team, what are you going to get out of it? Is it going to come back in a return of some kind? And really do the math and sit down and think, if I invest in this, what will I get back? You spend the time thinking about that when you pay for masterminds and coaching communities and other opportunities, conferences, etc. So spend the time thinking about the human that you're bringing into the business and what they could potentially unlock, solve, improve, etc. in order for your business to keep growing. I gave you a lot to think about. If you are really struggling with how your organization is designed, what next hire you need to make, how your team should be structured, if you need to rewrite everybody's job descriptions and re-level the business, this happens a lot in corporate too, guys, so it's not uncommon. We're here to help you. You can book a free consultation with On Call COO. All you have to do is go to melissafranks.com, and there you will find all of the information that you need, and we can help you do this. We are currently actively doing this for 25% of our client base. So you're in good company. It's a hot topic, and we love to do it. Until next time, friends, please know you are wise, you are strong, and you are capable, and I believe in you.